What's up, guys? Welcome to Quitting Mary, and today I want to discuss cannabis use linked to epigenetic changes scientists discovered. And this is a article from ScienceAlert.com. Now, disclaimer, I am not a healthcare professional. I am just an individual who smoked a whole lot of weed, who does not anymore, and I just want to discuss issues on possibly why we should not consume ourselves with cannabis. So let's dig right into this article. So it says cannabis use linked to epigenetic changes scientists discovered. And I briefly did a little research on epigenetics, and it's interesting that, we know about genetics, and genetics are genes or genetics or DNA molecules that are more set in stone. So things like your eye color, your hair color, your skin color, your sex, these things that are determined by your genes given from either your mother, genes from your mother, or genes from your father. These are set in stone genetics. There's no deviation from them. And epigenetics, why they're different is it doesn't necessarily change your genes, but it changes how your genes act, or how your genetics act. So, long story, I guess in layman's terms, it would be your genes are, or genetics are, the cards that you're given. Epigenetics are how you play the card. So it's different environmental, social, outside factors that determine how your genes or your genetics act, or they change over time due to how they react in certain environments. So let's dig right into this article. So it says, using cannabis may cause changes in the human body epigenome. A study of over 1,000 adults suggests that epigenome functions are a set of switches activating or deactivating genes that change how our bodies function. So again, epigenetics, and if we look at, I'm going to briefly go, the word epi comes from the Greek epi, which can mean upon, over, near, attached to, before, after. So the idea of something being attached to something, and that's exactly how this idea of epigenetics is factors that attach to your genetics that change how your genetics act. It doesn't necessarily change your DNA or your genetics, but just change how they react to certain situations. So, back to the article. So he says, we observed association between a cumulative marijuana use and multiple epigenetic markers across time, says Li Fang Hu. I hope I'm saying that right. He's a preventative medical doctor and epidemiologist from Northwestern University Feinberg School of Medicine. Says cannabis is the most commonly used substance in the United States, with 49% of people trying it at least once. Hu and a team of U.S. researchers report that in their published paper, some U.S. states and other countries have made it legal, but we still don't fully understand the effects on our health. So it's interesting that, people, including myself at one time, I still don't think weed should be illegal. Like, it should be decriminalized. But the idea that weed is just this healthy thing, that's good for us, not saying it couldn't be an alternative for medication, but the idea of us smoking weed every day, all day for a large number of years, to deny that is not possibly some side effects or some issues with doing that. And even healthcare professionals will say, like I found out from most brief research I do, they still can't make, none of these tests have went long enough for us to truly know the effects on our health. So it says researchers studied around 1,000 adults who participated in a long-term previous study where they have been asked about their cannabis use over a 20-year period. Study participants provided blood samples on 2 occasions during that time at a 15 and 20-year point. They were aged between 18 and 30 at baseline, or year 0. Using these blood samples from 5 years apart, Hu and her team looked at the epigenetic changes, specifically in DNA methylation levels, or people who had used cannabis recently or for a long time. Addition or removal or the methyl groups from DNA is one of the most studied epigenetic modifications. So the idea of this methyl group and methyl group is basically the DNA methylation is a process by which the methyl groups are added to a DNA molecule. Methylation can change the activity of a DNA segment without changing the sequence. So again, epigenetics doesn't change your DNA, but it adds things to your DNA, which changes how your DNA reacts or acts in certain situations. Now, they say without changing the genomic sequence, it changes the activity of genes, because it's harder for cells to read genome instructions manual with these molecular changes in their way. Environmental and lifestyle factors can trigger these methylation changes and can be passed on to future generations, and blood biomarkers can provide information about both recent and historical exposures. And I find it's interesting about this epigenetic thing and what's genetic and what's epigenetic. You know, things like, okay, in the black community, they always tend to say things like high blood pressure, diabetes. These are things that are genetically passed down. Like, because my mother or my grandmother had diabetes, I'm more prone to inherit. These are inherited illnesses. But that doesn't really make sense that, you know, I can inherit diabetes when they said, you know, most of these illnesses don't occur until you're older in age. You know, I'm not born and immediately get high blood pressure or diabetes. It, you know, takes years for it to actually occur, and it doesn't magically appear. It appears because we have poor diets. We're not eating healthy. So I think a lot of these illnesses that they say are hereditary are more so epigenetic. They're more so influenced by our environment, things around us, what we eat, what we consume, what we put into our body, that changes how our body reacts to certain or not react to certain things. So I do think things like illnesses like I said, diabetes, high blood pressure, that has always been told to us it's hereditary, it's something that's passed through genetics. I think they're more so epigenetic. I think most illnesses, as far as things like that, can be corrected or turned around through a healthy diet, a healthier lifestyle. So I think lifestyle factors play a huge part in most things on how we react to stress, depression, illnesses. These are lifestyle factors and not just, you know, making them be this genetic thing. Because I think if we put it in the box of it's just a medical condition that my parent gave me that I can't change, then what hope is that for life? You know, although many people, and it's interesting, they say people that have diabetes. One time my wife, she was getting her blood work done, and the guy who was giving her blood work, he was saying she didn't have diabetes, but he said, you know, most people, insurances won't cover most people with life insurance that have diabetes, because it's historically they don't change. Most people who get diabetes, they won't change their eating habits. They won't change what they eat. They won't exercise. It's not so much they're just genetically prone to this. They have lifestyle factors that are hard to break. So, moving on. So he says, we previously identified associations between marijuana use and the aging process as captured through DNA methylation. We wanted to further explore whether specific epigenetic factors were associated with marijuana and whether these factors are related to health outcomes. The comprehensive data on participants cannabis use allowed them to estimate cumulative use over time as well as recent use and compare it with DNA methylation markers in their blood for analysis. They found numerous DNA methylation markers in the 15-year blood samples, 22 that were associated with recent use and 31 associated with cumulative cannabis use. In these samples, in a 20-year point, they identified 132 markers linked to recent use and 16 linked to cumulative use. Interestingly, we consistently identify one marker that has been previously associated with tobacco use, who explained, suggesting the potential shared epigenetic regulation between tobacco and marijuana use. Now, I found this interesting because, I've said in the past that I think part of my issue with quitting weed was also a tobacco addiction. I like to smoke blunts. I didn't even really like smoke joints. I specifically like blunts. I didn't like to vape. I mean, edibles take too long for it to take effect. I like the idea of smoking, so I feel like I had a tobacco addiction on top of a weed addiction because I did prefer to take weed in a certain manner. So the idea of smoking, rolling and smoking and the tobacco, the hitting the back of my throat, I was addicted to that as well, more so than just marijuana. If I just had to vape the whole time or only eat edibles, I probably wouldn't have gotten as addicted to cannabis. So interesting. I do think when you smoke blunts, not only do you have a cannabis addiction, you have a tobacco addiction as well. So moving on. It's important to note that this study doesn't prove that cannabis directly causes these changes or causes health problems. The research has been provided novel insights into the association between marijuana use and epigenetic factors, says epidemiologist Drew Nanini from Northwestern University. And this is interesting that all these studies, and I listened to a lot of podcasts and talks about epigenetics, and even with all this research and biologists, we can't make determinative resolutions with this. I think, according to the scientists, there has not been enough research done to make an accurate hypothesis or accurate determination on how epigenetic plays a part in the grown adult. We would have to actually take a person that was in his mother's womb, possibly even study before that, take somebody that's in their mother's womb, study them to in old age, study their children to actually go into this deep study. And of course there's a lot of factors on why they couldn't actually test a human and a fetus for that long period of time. That's why they use lab mice and rats, which, can we truly know how it affects humans by testing on a mouse? Maybe some things, but we're not mouse, we're not rats. But whatever the case, I think humans are a very interesting creature, and how we turn out in life, there are many factors as far as genetics, as far as lifestyle factors, as far as chance, a lot of our personality characteristics, where we are, our location. There are so many factors that determines who we turn out to be in life or who we don't turn out to be in life. So we can't just make a, one and done statement and say, oh, if you smoke weed your whole life, this is going to happen to you. There are other factors that play into why you turn out a certain way. So this article, I don't think, is nailed in the coffin that, okay, if you smoke weed, it's going to change how your body reacts to certain situations. But I do think, like the article is saying, it can change how your DNA, how how your DNA choose to react to certain situations. Okay, if you use weed to deal with stress or to sleep or to balance yourself out, your body gets used to that. It starts creating more genes to accommodate, this substance coming into your body. That's why, when you start off smoking weed, you can smoke a small amount and get high. The longer you smoke, the more you have to smoke, or the higher dose or the more potent weed you have to smoke to get that same effect. And by doing this, your body, your DNA is slowly being changed. Not your DNA, but how your DNA reacts to stress, reacts to this substance. And we don't know how this plays a factor in the lives of our children or our unborn children. They made a point that it's so important that kids being in the mother's womb, you don't think about this. You as a fetus, you were in your grandmother's body. When a mother is pregnant with a girl, the baby girl at a very young age, at 12 weeks, has the egg she's going to have in her life. So essentially, your egg is already in your grandmother. So, these things, there's a big thing. They also talk about epigenetic trauma, on how it's carried from generation to generation. And it makes sense when you think about your egg was in your grandmother's body. And to say that it possibly isn't some effect on how we treat our body and our lifestyle factors, how it's not going to affect our children or our unborn children. And I think this article is not so much should be a warning to us in this lifetime, but more so to our children and what we're playing out for them. We don't know how years of weed use may affect their life. And it may not be like, oh, you smoke weed, your child comes out with autism, which I've heard some cases and experiences that people say they believe they have autism because their mama smoked weed while they were pregnant. But just even simply how you react to stress. If your mother, people, like I said, we use weed as a stress reliever, but ultimately we should learn how to deal with stress in a sober mind. But if you train your body, train your DNA to constantly deal with stress by ingesting this substance, is going to change how your DNA reacts to certain situations. And the idea of epigenetics changing is how your DNA reacts. They're saying it is cases where they see these changes have passed on to the next generation. Now, is it linked to one thing? Are there multiple factors? We don't know. But, why chance it with our children? So let's finish out this article. So he says, of course, additional studies are needed to determine whether these associations are consistently observed in different populations. Moreover, studies examining the effects of marijuana on age-related health outcomes may provide further insight into long-term effect of marijuana on your health. So with all this legalization and everything that we have, and weed is a wonder drug, and it's herbal, and it's from God, and it's medicinal, and yada yada yada. We don't have enough research to know what outcomes, what effects, because you do anything for a long period of time. It's better than pharmacia, but I'm going to say it's going to have some type of side effects. It may not be as serious as other drugs, but it does come with some side effects if you use it for a long period of time. And we don't want to take that chance and pass these things on to our children. So that was the end of this article. And don't take my word for it. Like I said, I'm not a biologist, obviously, not a healthcare professional, but I would encourage you to research epigenetics to find out, how what we do in our lifestyle, in our life, how it can affect our body and can affect our children, how they react to certain situations. I would look up Dr. Nessa Carey, which she does a lot of talks and research on Epigenetics, and I find her very informative, very interesting. So look her up. But until next time, guys, what do you think? Comment below. I would like to know. But until next time, like, subscribe, share, and please remember, we are all in this together. Peace.